Good afternoon and welcome to the second round of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Championship with GT World Challenge America and Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's a beautiful morning here in Eastern Italy as over 20 professional racing drivers and some sim racers prepare to qualify for the 60-minute sprint race at the Misano World Circuit. Last week, the field took on California's WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, where Brian Heitkotter absolutely obliterated the field, helped by a big Turn 2 pileup in the season-opening event. Tonight, though, things may look a little bit different, with the field better practiced and better prepared for the second round of the season. My name's Kyle Heyer, lead commentator at SimTV, joined by GT World Challenge America pit reporter Ryan Marine. Last week on the west coast of the U.S., we saw Heitkotter's dominance, but also some spectacular racing, Ryan. Now we head to Eastern Italy. Should we expect more of the same?
I think so, no doubt about it. Hello, Kyle. Hello, everyone tuning in. Thanks for joining us for what figures to be a lot of fun here throughout the course of the day. We've got 20 minutes of qualifying getting underway, and your question about should we expect what we saw last week, I think that carries over to qualifying here, where 1 week ago we saw just how important qualifying was. Brian Heitkotter grabbed the pole with a last-minute dash to the pole in the qualifying session and was able to pull away for the race win and left the field quite literally in the dust after a pretty major dust up there on the first lap. I expect that to be the same here at Misano, which in real life has a history of some opening lap crashes. So I do think you are going to put a premium on this qualifying session. Getting a good starting spot is going to be critical if you have your eyes on a podium at the end of today's race today.
Absolutely. So qualifying is just now beginning here, Ryan. So let's head down to the racetrack and get a look at what's going on out there on the circuit at the moment. And this racetrack, we're going to go over this a little bit later with Tom O'Gorman as he did a little lap guide for us as we cut now to the racetrack. So let's head on down, Ryan, and get qualifying underway. So just over 4 kilometer circuit, but a driver that's here this week that was not here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca was Josh Staffen, and he's one of the drivers over at Champion Motorsports, the group that is hosting these events, Ryan. So he's been incredibly fast in practice all week long, and I think he's definitely one of the favorites to go out here and win this race today.
I think so, and has been the standard bearer from the sim racing community throughout practice. And going back to the practice session that preceded this qualifying session that you folks are watching right now, he was the pace setter there by 1/10 of a second over last week's winner, Brian Heitkotter. Kitten Cook very much in the mix. He was third fastest, just over 2/10 of a second off of Staffen's pace-setting speed. So I think those three have established themselves at the top of the field. Kevin Boehm was awfully impressive with a late run in that practice session to get within 3/10 of Staffen's time. Everyone else quite a ways back. So I think the likely winner is going to come from those 4 names I just mentioned: Staffen, Heitkotter, Cook, and Boehm. But Staffen, given his experience with this game as well as his obvious pace, I think he is the one to keep an eye on for sure.
You mentioned Kenton Cook in this number 59. That's that Aston Martin platform, the GT3 version. Again, he runs the GT4 version of this chassis in GT World Challenge America, and it's a new chassis for him this season. So he's working on track. You mentioned him as one of the favorites. Last week, he finished 5th best, and he could have run a little bit better, but there was a lot of trouble in WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca last week. A lot of incidents, a lot of spins, a lot of crashes. Now that the drivers have had a week to kind of sort things out, do you think that'll be a little bit better this week, or are we still watching out for drivers on the opening few laps?
Well, it's always going to be the case when you have everyone packed together. That's going to be the danger zone, if you will, with the start of this race. And Kenton Cook, I guess, goes to show that just qualifying up front doesn't guarantee you won't be caught up in that mix. He was on the outside of the front row, did not get a good start, and was taken out pretty early on, then had some penalties he had to serve for some contact as well, but still able to recover for that top 5 finish. I think, though, that while, yes, the drivers are more used to Assetto Corsa now, those that maybe didn't have a ton of experience prior to getting started with this GT Rivals series, they do have a bit more sim seat time now, but the difference is last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, that's a track that almost all of these drivers knew very, very well. Not so much here at Misano, obviously not in the GT World Challenge America schedule, so it's going to be a bit of a learning experience from that standpoint as well.
So 14 minutes left in qualifying, and Steve Streimer in the 42s in the Mercedes platform. I heard some drivers discussing before qualifying began how the Mercedes really pulls on the straightaway. You see him get into the Armco there. But the Mercedes platform, very powerful, very strong in a straight line. Again, this is a very flat racetrack here today, Ryan, so I think we're going to see the differentials in horsepower be very apparent.
Well, that's one thing we're going to keep an eye on. That's the beauty of GT3 racing, right? You look at these cars, and there are so many various platforms that you're looking at. Here's the mid-engine to Audi, certainly one to keep an eye on. And Audi won at this track in the GT World Challenge Europe race a year ago in one of the races. The other race was won by a Lamborghini, very much a sister car to this Audi. So that might make you think that that could be a platform to keep an eye on. And Audi was fastest with Staffen in practice, but we saw Highcotter fast with the front engine Nissan. You've got the rear engine Porsche to keep an eye on as well. They've been relatively quick. The Mercedes, as you mentioned, certainly in the mix with Bohm running in the top 5 in practice with that Mercedes, and the drivers certainly have been talking about it. So the beauty of it is, though, with the balance of performance system, you should have a relatively even playing field in terms of absolute lap pace, single lap pace, but the cars make that pace in different ways, and so oftentimes it is straightaway speed that gets your attention, and there are some places at this track where that could come in handy.
There's Kevin Bowman, one of the other Mercedes. That's the number 90. He's up a second on his best lap. He ran a 36.4 a couple laps ago. We'll see if he can improve it this time through as he crosses the line. It's going to be a 34.377. That'll jump him up to second on the board there.
Yeah, impressive stuff from a guy who certainly knows his way around a race car. Usually on the engineering side, he's an employee of Honda, actually. So it's kind of interesting to see him running in a Mercedes this week. He's done some pro racing in Honda products or Acura products, but interesting to see what he's done here in the AMG. And I wonder if the engineer in him was looking at this track layout, thinking about the exact thing you were talking about. Maybe there is an advantage to this Mercedes AMG platform, and thinking from that engineering perspective, maybe sizing it up and thinking this gives him the best chance for a good result. But impressive stuff so far. Like I mentioned, in the top 5 in practice. Here he is in the top 3 in qualifying. And from the real world ranks, interestingly from the TC category of SRO America, he's quickly proven to be one of the real world racers to keep an eye on. I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Here's Brian Highcotter in the number 5 Nissan GTR. He was last week's winner at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and Ryan, he absolutely dominated there. He just drove away. Obviously, there was an incident in turn 2 that kind of let that gap grow a little bit, but he's really come out on a very strong in the practice race at Paul Ricard a few weeks ago. Went out there and drove from the back of the field to finish inside the top 5. This is certainly a threat to win this whole thing. And he sits second right now with a 1:33.837 is his best time. He's 0.3 off, though, Josh Staffen in the 2:30.
Well, we talked about it a lot on last week's broadcast, and it's worth reiterating in case we have some folks joining us for the first time. And if you're not familiar with Brian's story, he got his start in pro racing courtesy of sim racing back in the halcyon days of PlayStation 2. And really impressive what he was able to do, winning a gaming competition that gave him a race seat with Nissan, beating out over 50,000 competitors from North America. And they plopped him into a race seat, and he immediately acquitted himself quite well, raced all around the world in some major endurance races as well, and as in the precursor to what is now the SRO America GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. It was at the time Pirelli World Challenge GT, and had some good runs there, including race wins in Nissan equipment. So his background in sim racing is pivotal, although he doesn't have a ton of experience with Assetto Corsa, but he's come a long way in a short amount of time. And speaking to him on our SRO America Instagram Live fan Q&A last week, he was talking a lot about how much he likes this simulation and how it's taken a little time to adapt, but he's gotten his head around it now, and that's kind of a scary notion if you're the rest of the field. He's been fast already. He's only getting faster with more experience.
So with about 10 minutes left in qualifying, let's briefly take a look at the timetable here just to see how the lap times are going. So Staffen at the top of the board with a 1:33.5. He's run 5 laps. You see Brian Highcotter, he's 0.2 off with a 33.837. Then we check Bohm back in 3rd, Grunwald, and Kenton Cook is now up to 5th. He's 1 second off Staffen's time. Tom O'Gorman back there in 9th place. So, of course, Carl Whitmer, also in one of those NSX platforms, he's in 10th.
Yep, it's interesting diversity in this field. You see Audi, Nissan, Mercedes, BMW. in the top 4. You get some Astons mixed in. The first Lamborghini with Mads Siljehag joining us for the first time in our GT Rivals series, a real-world racer driving alongside Nikolai Elganian in Pirelli GT4 America for an X competition this year, but extensive experience racing in Europe, and I haven't been able to determine for sure if he's raced at Misano, but it does look like there's a shot that he has, and perhaps that real-world experience will help him. He does have some real-world experience in a Lamborghini going back a few years, although does most of his racing in a KTM Crossbow GT4 as a Ryder Engineering factory driver. So one to keep an eye on. We don't have a ton of data on him in terms of his sim racing acumen, but pretty good early returns. And then you see Anderson, O'Gorman, and Whitmer completing the top 10. So a great diversity of cars and drivers from different series, real world and sim racing, all coming together and all pretty close in the top 10.
So Kenton Cook jumps up to third best on the timing and scoring right now. That's a 134.212. That'll put him there. Just over 8 minutes left in qualifying. Take a look down the order. Kyle Marcelli in the number 80, another one of those NSX platforms. He rolls around the course right now. There's actually a couple drivers that have switched to the NSX this week, Ryan, including Carl Whitmer, who we touched on briefly. But again, I think the strengths and weaknesses of the cars are going to become very apparent on a track with this many straightaways, but also it's fast around here. A little bit of downforce ain't going to hurt you too bad either. So the cars that maybe do a little bit better in the higher speed sweepers might have a slight advantage today.
That's right, but there is that give and take, right? You definitely can carry more speed through the high-speed corners when you carry a bit more downforce, but with downforce comes drag, and there are a few long, full-throttle sections around Misano, and with that in mind, you really don't want to have all that drag packed onto the car. So it's a give and take, it's a balance. You need to have that handling that the downforce gives you, but you don't want to carry more than you need because that'll hurt you in terms of straight line speed. But this track does offer a nice mixture of different things. Looking at it, again, some high-speed sections, you've got some low-speed stuff as well, where mechanical grip comes in handy, and then the straightaways, where you don't want to carry too much downforce, but you need that downforce elsewhere. So it should be a good challenge for these guys. Also interesting looking at the different curbing that you see around this track. Some you can use, and we've seen it catch out a couple of guys as well. And so those who have practiced and maybe intentionally tested out some of the curbing might have an advantage as we get into the race.
So, take a look at the top of the scoring pylon. Nothing's really changed up here in a while. Still Josh Staffen at the top of the board with a 133.561. That's been pretty constant there. So he'll hang out at the top of the pylon. We mentioned Cook up to third. And Takas Wikas in the 465 in sixth place in the 465 car. He has a 134.7. This is a driver that's new from last week.
Yep, don't have a ton of information on Wikas, but clearly has some pace, representing that Champion Racing group that, again, is helping with the Champion Motorsports, helping to organize this deal and supplying some of their sim racers to really serve as a litmus test in some respects for our real-world drivers. And it's interesting here that presumably our sim racers have more experience on Misano than our real-world drivers do, and we saw more of the real-world guys in the top 10 relative to the sim guys last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, and I wonder if that real-world experience, as we see Tom O'Gorman go for a bit of a ride there, helped in that regard, and now some maybe track knowledge from in-game helping some of our sim racers, which are well represented, looking at 4 of the 5 sim racers in this field inside the top 7. That's really impressive stuff from that group, and again, proving to be a good litmus test for our real-world professional.
So, at this time, we want to direct your attention to the bottom of the screen here. We've got some giveaways going on thanks to our partners at Asus and Republic of Gamers. You can enter in the chat, so make sure you check that out. It doesn't cost you anything to enter, so you might as well give it a go here, Ryan. So 5 minutes left to go in qualifying. Still some drivers making their way around the course. We're still looking at Tom O'Gorman. Let's jump over to, he's actually in the green right now, up a tenth of a second, but the delta's hard to keep green here as you go through some of these faster corners. You talked about track limits, Ryan. You see on corner exits some of those yellow and black, I think Guy Cosmo and I decided to call those bumble strips, kind of bumblebee colored curbs on track out, and those are kind of gnarly if you hit those with the bottom of the splitter.
Right, and it can upset the car and send you on a wild ride, but maybe more importantly, it can do some damage to the car and hurt you with downforce creation and perhaps even alignment. I'm not quite sure how much of that is modeled in-game, but on the other hand, you know, it's one of those things, if the car can manage it, they're placed in positions where if you can use that extra runoff room, it is beneficial. So you're going to have to push the limits for sure, as we see Alec Udell doing just that a few moments ago. Currently 17th, a real-world driver out of the GMG stable. A lot of experience in Porsche and Audis. Would like to see himself a little bit further up, though, in this running order. Still plenty of time to get some laps in with just under 4 minutes of qualifying remaining.
All right, so take a look at the weather conditions out here. Obviously, it's a little bit earlier in the day than we're going to be racing. We'll be racing in a few hours here, towards 6, 7 p.m. Right now, it's about 2 in the afternoon, and we'll take a look. 38 degrees Celsius track temp, 29 degrees in the air. So the track's a little bit warm out here, but light clouds. It's a beautiful day for racing. No chance of rain this afternoon, so at least they'll have a relatively dry and grippy racetrack to work with. You also notice the marbles collecting on track exit. Don't want to get yourself in those. Those are a little bit slick. But we talked about curbs. Let's talk about track limits a little bit. You get three strikes, basically. You go out a little bit wide, that's strike 1, do it again, strike 2, and then your third strike, you're going to get a drive-through penalty there, Ryan. So we saw that a little bit, not for track limits violations necessarily, but for contact. But with a track that's got so much extra pavement, I could certainly see some drive-throughs for track limits this afternoon.
Yeah, if our experience with our test run at Paul Ricard, kind of a similar track in that regard, with a lot of extra runoff room where you can push the issue for track limits, if that's any indication, we are going to see some problems with that. But with that 3-strike policy, that is something to keep in mind, because you can play a little strategy with that. If you save those are basically like jokers, right? And I'm sure you can't go clearly cutting the course, but you can maybe play that to your advantage a little bit if you save those for a crucial moment, especially late in the race when you don't need to have those in case you make a mistake. So there is a little bit of strategy and gamesmanship that can be employed by these drivers in regards to that 3-strike policy.
Dirk Grunwald in the 136. That's I think it's the only M6 platform we have out on the racetrack right now. And there's also the Ferrari behind him. So again, we're seeing a lot of Mercedes, a lot of Astons, a couple Bentleys out there. But the BMW platform is just Grunwald today, and he was really quick in the practice race that we had yesterday that was not streamed. So I'm really expecting Dirk to be good today. He's 5th right now. The 134.569 is his best lap.
Yeah, I am a bit surprised that we only have the one BMW, given the fact that we saw Whitmer last week so impressive in a BMW, and then he makes the switch. So maybe it's a bit of monkey see, monkey do. We'll see if others follow him as well. But as far as Dirk is concerned, he's actually a native of Germany, now living in Seattle, a software engineer, and drives a Lotus Elise in the real world, which is pretty awesome, actually. But this is his preferred car in the sim, so really kind of a BMW ringer, if you will. Great to see him flying the Munich colors right there in the top 5 as it stands, the second fastest of our sim racers.
Guy Cosmo in the number 8. There's a busy part of the racetrack on the backside of the course here as everyone's trying to get a last lap in before qualifying concludes. And Guy Cosmo got involved in an accident last week in this number 8. I believe also got a penalty at some point. So going to try to look for a little bit cleaner run today. Is currently 12th. That's about midfield. We've got 32 drivers entered for this race, and Guy currently sits in P12.
Yep, Guy Cosmo again driving the Bentley. You can see the other Bentley right there. I suspect that's Patrick Byrne, his real-life co-driver, and they drive for K-Pax Racing in the States and GT World Challenge America. There is Patrick. He's still on a flyer here. Just 30 seconds left in qualifying. We talked about it. You really don't want to get stuck mid-pack, given the way that some of these starts have gone in our sim races. So he's got some work to do. Patrick right now 23rd on the leaderboard. We look towards the top. Here's Brian Highcotter, might be on a run. He's on the outside looking in as far as the pole is concerned. Needs to find 0.2 of a second on what appears to be his final flying lap.
Yeah, he's up a 10th right now. If he can find another 10th and a half, he might have pole here. So qualifying is complete. He'll just have to finish this lap. He'll get no more as he works through the far side of the course here, trying to carry as much speed as possible. Currently not up or down. He's right on the money with his previous best lap time.
Well, that's what we're going to keep an eye on, and you've got that in front of you, the relative time. I don't, but he does look pretty smooth right here. And again, 0.2 of a second doesn't sound like much, but when you're trying to chase down an experienced sim racer like Staffen, that is a big mountain to climb. He pulled it out with a last lap flyer and qualifying slide a little wide there, and that might cost him. But he did it a week ago. We'll see if he's got the ice in his veins once again. What does Brian Highcutter have?
Final couple corners here for the number 5 is he'll make, it's actually going to head to pit lane, so actually decided to give up on that time. So 2 minutes left for drivers that are currently out on track. Shelby Blackstock is up in the green right now as he comes across the line. He's up only a 10th. We'll see if it's enough to bump him ahead of Guy Cosmo, who's currently 13th, and Blackstock crosses the line, and it's going to be a 35 point, looks like it didn't count, so it must have had a track limit violation there. Patrick Byrne on the 23rd position in the 9 car is working his way around. His best is a 37.2, kind of down into the tail end of the field here, back in 23rd, finishing up his lap as well.
Patrick, very experienced racer. He's raced all around the world, but new to this Bentley, has had limited testing with the Bentley. Did do the one race weekend we've been able to do so far in GT World Challenge America, coming around onto the front straightaway. And looks like he'll have to settle for 24th unless he can improve here, and it appears that the answer there is no. So a lot of room left in front of him to try and improve, and hey, on the bright side, you get to pass some people, and that's always fun. So I'm sure he'll take some solace in that as we have our field set now for our second race of the GT Rivals season.
Absolutely. So just finishing up qualifying here, we're going to go over the qualifying order here in just a moment, and we'll kind of run you through down who's got pole and who's got second through the rest of the field here. So we'll head back to the racetrack in just a moment, bring you the rest of your grid. So here is a look at the timetable, and at the top of the pylon again, it's Josh Staffen in the number 230 Audi R8. Again, one of those AM drivers from Champion Motorsports, and Brian Highcutter in second, our winner from WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, back in second place. 0.2 off, though. Staffen is just that quick.
Yeah, a really impressive lap from Staffen, who's a 24-year-old from New Jersey. No real-life racing experience, but clearly knows what he's doing here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. That is a great lap. Fastest in 2 of the 3 sectors. Kenton Cook was able to put in the fastest first sector time, and by a fairly sizable margin there. So Kenton's going to be one to keep an eye on as well. He's still 0.6 back, though. That is a big, big gap between him, Kenton, and the top 2. The big thing I'm going to be watching with Kenton, though, is can he get a better start to the race than he has both last week and also in our test race the previous week. And then we've got Kevin Boehm, who's running the Mercedes. I've learned that's because of his partnership with CrowdStrike Racing and DXDT Racing, a real-world team, and GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. And then Dakota Dickerson, didn't talk about him during the qualifying session, but he ends up in 5th in the Ferrari. I thought one of the more impressive drives a week ago at Laguna.
Absolutely, and again, in that Ferrari platform, which we didn't really see a whole lot of last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. I think it might have just been him in the Ferrari. I think that's also the case. No, we got another one out there that's Rieger starting 11th. He'll also be in a Ferrari platform, as well as another Rieger in the field, don't we, at the very tail of the field?
That's right, the brothers Rieger, yes. Nico and Timo. So Timo new to this race here. He's done some real-world racing as well, but his first GT Rivals start. So welcome to him, and excited to see the Prancing Horse represented here in Italy. It seems like it would be inappropriate not to have a couple Ferraris, and luckily we've got some Lamborghinis in the field here as well at Misano.
Absolutely. So we'll take a look at the racetrack here, and again, we've taken a look at this beautiful circuit. This northeastern Italy here in Misano, and this track was originally constructed back in 1972, and we're going to go over that a little bit once the race, the pace lap begins. We're going to roll you through a bit of an onboard lap with driver Tom O'Gorman, who's going to roll off 10th tonight in his number 37 NSX. So in just a moment, we're going to step away and show you an ad here, but we'll be back in just a second. Stay with us. The beautiful beaches of eastern Italy are normally fairly quiet, with the eerie sound of gentle waves and warm summer wind. But there's nothing quiet or gentle about our mission today, which is to bring you the second round of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Championship to you from Misano, Italy. Sports car fans around the world enjoy GT World Challenge all year long, and thanks to Assetto Corsa Competizione and AWS, we're able to bring you this next-level esports competition between sim racers and professional motorsports drivers. Welcome to GT World Challenge America's GT Rivals. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine, bringing you round 2 of the 2020 season from Misano Circuit. Ryan, welcome back. We've just concluded qualifying and about to get rolling here for the race in just a couple minutes. We've already gone through the starting lineup here, but just a few minutes away from getting the second 60-minute race of the season underway.
Well, exciting times, intense moments there on the grid as the drivers have a few moments to themselves before they roll off on the pace lap here in a couple of minutes. An impressive job in qualifying from Josh Staffen, the 24-year-old from New Jersey, to take the pole by 0.2 of a second over Brian Heidkotter, who looked like he might have been on a lap to challenge Staffen, but just a little miscue, easy to do, slid a little bit wide, and ultimately bailed on that lap. He'll settle for the outside of the front row. But still, 2 races, 2 front row starts for Heidkotter. Kenton Cook will start third after starting on the front row last week, but still about 0.6 of a second behind the pole sitter. I think, though, those are your 3 favorites, with a wild card Kevin Boehm there in 4th with Mercedes power this weekend. Excited to see what he can do within the first Ferrari, Dakota Dickerson in 5th.
All right, and so we're going to take you through a lap guide here with driver Tom O'Gorman, who rolls off 10th tonight, but here is his lap of Misano Circuit. Misano World Circuit is a 4.23 kilometer, 16-turn circuit located in Misano, Italy. It's characterized by long straightaways, hairpin corners, and a few full-throttle sweepers. Originally constructed in 1972 as a 3.4 kilometer circuit, it hosted 3 editions of the San Marino Grand Prix. In 1993, it was modified to add half a kilometer with an additional section. In 2006, it was modified further, with the final sector seeing large changes. This is the layout we have today. Expected lap times are between 1 minute 34 seconds and 1 minute 37 seconds. The lap is incredibly quick, with several full throttle kinks in the straights that bring cars right out to the track edge.
Coming onto the front straight, it's a relatively long front straight, but it goes by quick as you pulling gears up to 4th and just touching 5th gear as you come into turn number 1. A really fast, large chicane, slinging it in, and you can use the inside curbs here at turns 1, 2, and 3, but getting back down to 1st just for a second. Now back on the power, using all the inside curbing at turn number 3, and then fighting the car using all the grip we have to keep it on track at the exit. Now turns 4, 5, and 6 right here, super critical for lap times at Misano. We're going to use all of the curbing on the insides of turn numbers 4 and 5 and 6. This transition right here, absolutely critical. Coming onto this relatively long straightaway down into a very good passing zone at turn number 8. Turn 8, really easy to overshoot. It's a pretty normal entry, opens up just a little bit on exit, deep on the brakes here, down to 1st gear a little bit. I missed the apex slightly, but by getting power down, you can use a little bit of that exit curbing and getting the car back over to the left. We're decreasing radius through turns 9 into turn number 10, which is another critical point on the track to get a good run down the back straight. You see, you use all the curbs early on the power, let the car track all the way out, and we're going to get all the way to the top of 6 down this back straight. Now, it is a long straight, but it isn't actually straight. We're going to kink right a couple times. Here's that first kink using all of the curb as we are now deep into 5th gear. Pulling 6th halfway through this straightaway, another kink right. As soon as the wheel goes straight on the brake, slinging it through the final kink to the right, tracking all the way out, not too much more, and then fighting the car down to the apex, down to 1st gear, and that's at turn number 14. Now, a couple of kinks left to finish off the lap. Turn 15, you can use all that inside curbing once again, but not a lot of the exit, and then really challenging finishing of the lap here. Not to go too wide at turn 16. Those yellow curbs can get you, and that's a lap of Misano.
Welcome back live to the GT Rivals Championship from round 2 from Misano, Italy. My name is Kyle Heyer, again joined by Ryan Marine. We're on the warm-up lap here, just getting ready to go racing for 60 minutes this evening. It's about 7 o'clock p.m. and it is a beautiful, beautiful night here, Ryan. I'm so excited to get this one underway, and hopefully we'll have a little bit less calamity than we had last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca.
Well, fingers crossed. I know everyone in the field would like that to be the outcome as well, but it is always a treacherous thing, the start of any race, let alone a sim race, so we'll see what happens. You mentioned an evening race, and you can see the time at the top of the screen, 7:07 p.m. in-game. Traditionally, in GT World Challenge Europe competition, this has been a night race. This will end around sunset in-game for us here on this broadcast, but the evening start time means cooler temperatures, cooler than we've seen in practice and qualifying, and that could bring different cars to the front, something to keep an eye on as they come into formation.
So double file now as we get ready to go racing. Again, last week they came all the way to the start-finish line before they released green. A little bit of a stack up there on the pace lap. That was Dakota Dickerson in the Ferrari, and who was outside. I believe that was that Bohm in the Aston there. I'm trying to see if that was, or he's in a Mercedes tonight. So field rounds the final corner onto the front straight away here from Misano. Thank you again for joining us. Make sure you subscribe and like if you're watching on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like the video if you want to see more of this. We got Paul Ricard next week, but today we head to northeastern Italy for Misano for round number 2 of the GT Rivals Esports Championship, brought to you by GT World Challenge America and AWS. And we're now in formation, double wide, 30 cars deep. Here we go, green flag flies, we're racing at Misano in GT Rivals, and everyone scatters at the start. 2 and 3 wide through the first couple of corners there, Ryan. Everybody scattering, trying to find room to race. Still 2 wide through the middle of the field. There's Tom O'Gorman right in the middle of that. In the background, car off of the racetrack. That's one of the Acuras. Car off of the inside. That looks to be the 25 car. The 8 car goes wide. That is Guy Cosmo's Bentley, and there goes 81. That's Shelby Blackstock that goes on through.
Wow, that could have been calamitous. You saw the Bentley just shoot through the screen, and oh, big problems there for Guy Cosmo. Hard into the wall. Not the start he was looking for. Very aggressive right out of the gate up front, though. Staffen able to control from that opening, that front row start. Brian Heitkotter putting some pressure on, and here we see Bohm taking a look up the inside of Kenton Cook. Kenton in that purple Aston Martin, Bohm in the Mercedes AMG GT3. That right there is the battle for the 3rd spot, as Cook was able to get around Bohm, and he holds that spot now, but Bohm's in the slipstream.
Here he comes, gonna dive up the inside of the braking zone. He'll lunge up underneath. One more Kate, now hard on the brakes. The ABS vibrating. Cook's gonna run way out wide into almost to the grapple trap. Man, he's gonna get it just back on course there, but he'll hold on to the spot. That might be a track limits violation though, so we'll have to keep an eye on how many Kenton gets. Meanwhile, back up front, Heitkotter still hot on the heels of that Audi R8 leading the field. That's Staffen as they come through to complete lap number 1.
Well, Staffen has the credentials of a sim racer for sure, and so does Brian Heitkotter. He's got that real-world racing experience as well, and so he's going to be putting that to use here, trying to put some pressure on Staffen to force a mistake. We know Staffen is quick. He was very quick in our practice race a couple of weeks ago before we got the season started, and this is good stuff from Heitkotter here. It's good that we can see that he can hang with that Audi in race pace. The Audi had a pretty major advantage going back to qualifying a couple tenths of a second. That's what he won the pole by, but it seems like Heitkotter's here to race, and that's not a surprise. Our race 1 winner really showing well, putting the pressure on in the battle for the lead.
I don't think we've actually seen these two fight head-to-head like this, so we got 57 minutes remaining, so don't get too anxious here early, but you gotta be careful not to run into each other, because when you're fighting this hard on this big of a stage, things can get out of control really quickly, but Heitkotter is right to the rear bumper of that Audi, and I think we're gonna have a great 2-car battle at the front, and Kenton Cook is just in the background of that shot if these two get together.
Well, that's going to be the question. What kind of impact is the running off course from Kenton going to have? What are the stewards going to do about that? We do have real-life stewards taking a look at all of these things, assessing penalties as necessary. But for now, Kenton's in a good spot, able to get up to 3rd and hang on to that spot. It looks like Bohm has dropped back considerably, and now Kenton's going to hope that these two kind of wear each other out fighting for the lead. Tire preservation is going to be a storyline as well, and if these two are racing hard, that's going to be hard on the Pirelli tires, and that might give Kenton a chance to make his way into this fight and make it a 3-way battle as we come around to complete a lap.
The front two continue to battle. Meanwhile, deeper in the field, there's Tom O'Gorman, the number 37 Honda NSX, and he started this race in 10th place. He's up 4 spots. He's got the 84, the 136 of Dirk Grunwald, who we talked about before the race in that BMW M6 platform, and the 465 lined up. This is a great battle from 6th on back. Everyone still knows the tail. Out of line is the 84 Aston.
You can see how tight this field is once you get back about, to the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spots. The top 5 kind of in their own world in terms of the pace that we saw in qualifying, but you get further back than that, like we saw at Laguna last week, it does get awfully competitive, and this is maybe the fight to keep an eye on here with so many different makes and models, different experience levels of sim racing, real racing, GT3, GT4, touring cars, a little bit of everything mixed in, and that's going to make for a lot of fun here for 55 minutes.
Carl Whitmer in the number 22. He was incredibly quick last week. He made the change to the NSX platform this week. Currently sits in 11th. An NSX teammate right behind him, Shelby Blackstock in the 81, and then Jacob Abel. So we actually, and Kyle Marcel, we have 4 of those Acura platforms, all nose to tail 11th through 14th.
Yeah, running line astern as it stands. We'll see if they work together. And mentioned this on the broadcast last week. You'll see it listed as a Honda in-game, and that's because the Acura brand is not used outside of North America and China. So the NSX, as we know it in the States, is known as a Honda NSX in other markets, where it's an Acura NSX in the U.S. So we're racing in Italy. I guess we can call it a Honda, but it is the same car. It's just different branding depending where in the world you might be at that moment, as Abel does seem to have a little pace on Blackstock here. He's starting to put some pressure on, and we see a nice fight up ahead of that as well with looks like Blackstock working on Whitmer. So he's, and also this is Anderson here trying to hold off Whitmer, I should say. So Whitmer putting the pressure on, running a little wide there. Definitely one of the real world racers with some sim racing chops, but he's right in the thick of things. A little mistake, and that opens the door up.
Yeah, I saw the big dive up the inside. A couple cars running wide, and they do that snap back on course. As soon as you see them track out over the edge of the curbing, they jerk the car back onto the racetrack because they don't want to get themselves a penalty there. And you get 3 warnings, as we mentioned during qualifying, 3 warnings that it's a drive-through penalty, and that will be a disastrous way to end your day. Blackstock now under attack from Carl Whitmer as they head through the back sectors here.
We saw from Kitten Cook last week, you can recover from the drive-through penalty and get a good finish, but you're not going to win, not with guys like Staffen and Highcutter at the front. They're still fighting for the lead, about half a second between them, but this is great stuff. All of these NSXs in a line, and this GT3 Evo NSX has proven to be a really sharp weapon. Just about anywhere it's been deployed around the world, it has been really, really strong, winning a championship in the States last year in the Pro-Am category, winning a lot of races, including a Pro-Am lineup winning overall at Road America. So we know it's awfully good, and some pretty talented pilots behind the wheel here. This is Jacob Abel we're riding on board with, and while he doesn't have NSX experience, he does have a lot of Honda-powered racing experience in the open wheel ranks, and cool to see him for the second straight week joining us in our GT Rivals series.
So, 53 minutes left. We're just under 10 minutes in. In just a few minutes, we're going to have Colin Braun join us for a couple minutes here in the booth, and we'll drag him in when we get a chance. But up at the front, we have not seen these guys be able to break away from each other. Staffen's opened up just about a 3-car length lead over Heitkotter in that number 5 Nissan GTR, but they're going tit for tat right now there, Ryan. So I would expect this to continue for most of the day, as long as these two keep it nice and clean up front.
That's right. Staffen would like to get a little bit of a breather here, but Heidkotter's not willing to give it to him, and hanging right there a little bit further back than the last time we checked in on them, but still close enough that one mistake and all of a sudden the battle will be rejoined for the top spot. And I'm interested to see that purple Aston lurking in the background, almost at the back of the shot there. I think you could see it briefly. That's Kenton Cook. He's hovering there as well and has been able to pull away from Bohm just enough that he's a bit more comfortable, and maybe he can start to put some lap times together to try and challenge these top 2. But as long as he can see them, that's going to be a little bit of motivation for him, and something for the leaders to keep in mind, because they desperately do not want this to be a 3-car race. They want it to be settled between themselves, if at all possible, and Kenton Cook has his mindset on trying to break that up.
And we actually have Colin Braun here in the booth with us now. Colin, you got a copy? We'll see if we can get a hold of him here in just a couple minutes, but he is with us now, and we'll get a chance to talk to him a little bit, Ryan. Of course, Colin Braun ran last week, but is not on track this week, so he'll be with us in the booth here. So, checking back in, Tom O'Gorman's got the 84 Aston all over him. That's Don Bellinger in the blue and black Aston, chasing him down, and right behind him, there's the 465. That's one of those Nissan GTRs. Car slow in the background. That looks to be one of the Porsche platforms.
there's a nice move, opportunistic from the 44,
Whoa.
and ooh, that was a bit on the rude side, wasn't it? Didn't like that, and around goes the 44. A nice save by Anderson, a veteran of touring car competition with Tech Sport Racing, and able to get it back on track, but lost a ton of spots there after making a nice move for position.
And so we'll have a kind of scrape some of that time back. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, still 0.3 of a second between these top two. This is an epic battle here, and we are only 10 minutes into this. I just expect this to continue for most of the day. Again, I've said this before, but as long as these guys can keep this on course and not get themselves a drive-through like the 24 just did, that's, I think they'll be in good shape. That was the 24 of George Kurtz, who just got a drive-through for track limits violation, so he'll have to come on down. He has 3 laps to serve that penalty.
Well, that's unfortunate for George, who's an awfully good amateur racer in the real world. He's runs a cybersecurity company, CrowdStrike, which takes a lot of time, I'm sure. Whoa, big spin in front of George. Great job to get around that and really save both cars from taking some major damage. Was that Toby Grahovic who went around?
It was
another
Toby Grahovic.
Very experienced driver in the real world in BMW platforms, running that classic BMW shop out of Texas, so that's a bit surprising. You don't see Toby make mistakes like that in the real world very often, but not sure how much sim racing experience he has. But anyway, back to George. Just disappointing to see him pick that up. He's been a champion in SRO America competition, as it was known at the time, Pirelli World Challenge, and definitely one of the faster gentleman drivers in the field if you're looking for an AM driver. In fact, I'm sure when we get Colin on, he could talk about that, because Colin drives with George in a Mercedes AMG GT3 in GT World Challenge America.
Patrick,
and hey guys, I think I'm on. I think I got figured it out.
We sure got you there, Colin. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Cool to be part of the broadcast here.
Well, Colin, obviously not running here this week, but I'm sure you've had a chance to take a look at the broadcast so far. Very flat racetrack out here. It really promotes aggressive driving, as we've seen a lot of drivers lunge up the inside. But talk to us a little bit about this whole competition, this GT Rivals competition that we're engaging in the next couple months, and what it's been like for you as a driver.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, SRO has done a great job. SRO America guys have done a great job with putting this whole event on. I think it's super cool. I'm a bit disappointed I couldn't be part of it, as we're looking at a good battle here for, looks like, the lead. But yeah, I mean, disappointed not to be a part of it this week. I just had a bunch of things come up in my professional career with coaching and some things like that came up where I couldn't get quite the practice I needed. And, this is competitive. This is super, super competitive racing. And so without good practice, it's not fair to be out there, and I don't want to be in the way for these guys. They're obviously racing hard, and need to be a part of this whole e-racing scene. I think SRO's done a great job creating something exciting and fun for us drivers, and hopefully we put on a good show for the fans out there.
I think that's something that's so interesting to me is hearing how seriously the drivers are taking it, Colin. I think a lot of drivers are putting in many, many hours and days into practicing for these events. Can you talk a little bit about the practice that you do and the practice that you feel like you need to perform at a high level in this esports championship?
Yeah, I mean, for the fans out there that are watching, that think, hey, we just jump on here and it's, something we do on a Sunday. I mean, it's, days and days leading up to these events, practicing, working on trying to, figure out the setups on these cars and what works, and doing long runs, trying to look at what the tire degradation does over the course of a stint, and really try to analyze all the different things that are going on, because, even though the Assetto Corsa platform is great and provides a really realistic feel, it's different than what we do day in and day out in the real world. Everything's a little different. The tire reacts a little differently. The tracks change a little differently than they do in the real world. And so, just like a normal race, right? I mean, we got to prepare, we got to test, we got to practice, we got to feel like we know what we're doing when we go into it. So it takes time, and it takes a lot of focus. Even though it is just a video game, it's incredible how realistic it is.
I think one of the things that I've heard a lot of drivers talk about is when they're racing their competitors, drivers that you typically race in the real world at tracks like Circuit of the Americas, you've noticed the same tendencies. Is that something that you've noticed as well, racing your friends, your teammates, and that sort of thing? Do they drive the same in the sim in terms of a competitor as they do in real life?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, it's incredible. You know, we're obviously, George and I are racing in the Mercedes GT3 car, and in real life, you know, you go to a track like COTA. George and I had a great couple opening races there, finishing second in class, and you know, you feel what the car feels like. We went and drove it on the sim just to kind of get a comparison, and it's incredible how similar the cars feel as we take a look on board here, I think, with George. You know, incredible how well they've done modeling these cars. I mean, our CrowdStrike Mercedes feels just like it does in real life. It's incredible.
So we got about 46 minutes left in this race. We just got this started, and I think you're seeing how incredible that battle is at the front of the field. But talk to me a little bit about the qualifying, because this is something that we broadcast at the beginning of these events because we feel like it's so important to have a good starting position. Do you feel like you can come from the back of the pack, or do you feel like if you need to win these races, you got to start up front?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think, you know, I did the race in Laguna last weekend, last Sunday. Unfortunately, got hit at the start and wasn't able to have a really strong finish. But, you know, getting through those start of the races is the crucial part. And so I think it's one of those things, if you can qualify in the top bit, you can have a really strong race. I think if you qualify kind of in that mid-pack, you're sort of right in the hornet's nest of, you know, potential issues. And so I think you're better off being right at the front or really right at the back, where you can kind of take your time and weed your way through those first couple opening laps. It's just so crucial to get through without any incident. And, you know, it's the same thing in the real world, right? I mean, it's the same exact thing George and I talk about before every start of the, you know, a real SRO race, is trying to get through those first couple laps and make good decisions. It's just super important.
I want to know a little bit about how the track changes throughout the race. We see some of the marbles collecting on the sides of the surface and that sort of thing, and the line rubbering in. How much does a track change in only a 1 hour race? Because this is probably a little bit shorter than some of the events that you've done in the real world. I know you've done some endurance racing. So how much does the track change, and is that going to be a factor by the end of this thing?
Well, I think it is, and I think that's one of the tough things, you know, in testing on the virtual platform here that we struggle with a little bit to do as we take a look at Kent and Koch here in third. You know, we struggle to do, because when you test, you know, George and I would jump on here, get in our own server, set up a practice, but we don't have all these cars running, all the cars throwing the rubber off the tires, and so some of that stuff is hard to sort of predict. And, you know, we saw in Laguna, I thought last week, we didn't see a huge change with the track, but we certainly saw it gain a bit of grip as the day went on, but not a huge change. But you know, still, these are the kind of things that during the week practice helps you be prepared for.
So I want to know, obviously, we're living in a very strange time right now, and things are changing every day, but I'm kind of curious, with the way things are, what's a day in the life of Colin Braun right now? I mean, is it sim from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., or are you hanging out with the family? What goes on in the daily life of Colin Braun at this time?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, it's been definitely a lot of sim stuff lately, I would say, just trying to get my machine back up and going. I haven't done a lot of sim racing in a long time, as I've been so busy in the real world racing between all the different sports car series that I race in. But with this situation going on, it's given me a lot of time to really focus on getting my sim stuff set up and going. And you know, still I feel behind. I mean, so many of the real world drivers also decided to do a lot of sim racing during the last few years, and so I feel like they're definitely more prepared. I've been playing a bit of catch up, I guess, as we kind of go through this quarantine process. And so that's been fun. I've been doing a lot of exercise and working out. I love to ride my road bike, love to keep up my training. We're never sure, I guess, when this is all going to end. So I want to be ready to go when that happens. But I've been doing a lot of simming and a lot of exercise. That's kind of been my day.
Well, it's not a lot of opportunities I get to talk to drivers like you, Colin, so I'm curious, because I'm selfish like that, about what your favorite racetrack is. I mean, you've obviously had a chance to drive on a lot of circuits around America and the world, so tell me a little bit about your favorite tracks and if you have any particulars that you enjoy.
Well, that's a great question. I've got a couple that are actually going to be coming up here on this championship on the virtual world that are some of my favorites. I love Spa. I love Suzuka. Those two tracks are just incredible layouts. And so excited that SRO is going to those events. That's going to be a lot of fun in this virtual world. And, for me, I think another favorite of mine is Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Mossport up in Canada. Just absolutely love that track. We had a reasonably good run in the CrowdStrike Mercedes the last year there in the real world, and just one of my favorite places. That's such a cool track.
Actually, I'm pretty good buddies with Tom O'Gorman, and he tells me roughly the same thing. Watkins Glen's up there for him as well, and I'm local at that place, so that's got a special place in my heart there. But so now we got 41 minutes left in this race. Josh Staffen, one of the sim drivers that is one of the owners of the Champion Motorsports League that is running these events. Brian Heitkotter in second, Ketchen Cook in third. For the drivers that are real-world professional drivers in second, third, fourth, and so on, do you notice any differences between a sim driver and their tendencies versus someone that you've raced in the real world? Or is it too similar to really make a difference?
Well, I think if I'm honest, I think there are some differences. I think there's some things that are slightly different in this world than the real world. And I think that's part of what makes, each person that's good at their specific discipline, that hyper-focused and hyper-good, right? I mean, in the real world, there's things that are obviously a little different than the virtual world and vice versa. And I think, you kind of see the guys that are experts in their field sort of rise to the top. And, I think a lot of the real world things that we do apply very well in the Assetto Corsa game and the simulation, but I think there's just those little tiny tricks and details that these sim racers really, really understand because they've done so many laps. They know all the little tricks. They know all the little things that, make the tires last. And even though it might be very similar to what the real world is, it's just ever so slightly different. And when you get 30 plus of these cars on a racetrack, you start to see some of those differences shine through. And I think that's part of the fun part for me as a real world racer coming in racing against these virtual sim racers that are incredible at what they do. It's kind of neat to put up a benchmark like that.
So I guess another question I have for you is we got a lot of people watching right now on YouTube, almost 2,000 people watching at this time. What advice do you have for someone that is currently sitting at home, they're watching this, and they want to be a part of the motorsports world? What's the best way to get involved?
Well, I think if you want to be part of the real motorsports world, in the real world, I guess, come check out an SRO. If you're in America's race or ICGT race, and come see what it's all about. I think you'll find a group of people from race series officials, from the teams, from the drivers that are really open. They love engaging with new people, new fans. They love to share some details and discuss things. And so come on out, check us out, see what it's all about. We'll be more than happy to share info. And I think, if you're a guy looking at jumping in on the virtual world, I mean, it's easy enough. And I think that's the coolest part about the virtual side of things is you can have a computer. You don't have to have a really fancy graphics card or anything crazy. I mean, download Assetto Corsa. Jump on, check it out. You can buy yourself a sort of Logitech steering wheel and pedals, bolt it to hopefully your Asus PC, and off you go, and you can start gaming and get after it. I mean, I know a lot of these guys have really expensive, fancy rigs, and I know there's guys that are just as quick with bare bones, basic stuff. So you don't need to have super fancy stuff to go fast here.
And also, I guess my final question is we see a battle for 12th position on the racetrack right now, and this is between two very different platforms. Of course, the mid-engine Audi and the Aston Martin to the outside. Here comes the Acura up the middle, a little bit of contact there, pushing and shoving, and around goes Alec Udell in the 25. So with that said, the differences in the platforms. Obviously, this is a series where there's almost 20 different manufacturers. Tell me a little bit about racing the different kinds of cars and the strengths and weaknesses of each.
Well, that's something that I thought was really neat when I did the race in Laguna last week on here. Was obviously I'm used to driving the CrowdStrike Mercedes in real life, and I know its strengths and its weaknesses versus, say, the Acura, the Ferrari, the Bentley in real life. But I was interested to see how much that translated to the real virtual world here, and I was impressed. I mean, I have to say, I was really impressed that the little nuances and details and differences with the Mercedes versus the competitor cars sort of translated directly to what real world was. And so not giving too many secrets away, but I would say the Mercedes is kind of a really strong all-around car. It does everything really, really well. It doesn't stand out in particularly any area, but it's just really, really strong in everything. And so I think you'll see the Acura tends to have a little bit more top-end straight line speed, but it lacks a little bit in other places. And so you'll see the Ferrari, also a pretty good all-around car. So we take a look at Carl Whitmer here. Looks like he's got either a penalty or an issue, but you know, then we've got cars obviously like the Bentley that are really good all-around cars, and you know, the BMW is a really good all-around car. But it's neat to see the model differences and knowing what they are in real life and how that correlates. It's pretty darn impressive.
Colin, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can keep in touch and have you back at some point, either on the racetrack or in the booth. So thanks for chatting and enjoy the rest of the race.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys, and we got to keep rooting on Kevin here. I know he's part of the CrowdStrike team, and hopefully George can pull back from that penalty, and hopefully we'll get back on here and join you on the racing side of things here soon. Keep it up. You guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it. Alrighty, we'll wrap that up and move on now here in battle for the lead here, guys. Josh Staffen leads, but Brian Heidkotter is there. He's caught right back up.
Wow, look, making a lunge to the inside there. Really fascinating duel between these two, and lap traffic has played its part. We've seen that lead ebb and flow, and Staffen looked like he had it well in hand at points. Then Heidkotter's been on a charge like he is right now, and Kenton Cook's not out of this thing either. In fact, this is as close to the front two as he's been that I can recall since the very start of the race. So definitely keeping those two honest, and any slip up between those two and Kenton sitting in the catbird seat.
So those two battling, as you mentioned, has brought Kenton right back into the mix. So now it's a 3-horse fight for the front of the field. Looks like we got a drive-through penalty for Abel in the 11th spot in his Acura NSX. But as we mentioned, 3-horse fight. We're almost halfway in this race here, Ryan. So I think the dynamics of this are going to change a lot. The sun is going down the track, cooling off a little bit now. Only it's actually ambient temp out there, 25 in the air, 25 on the racing surface. So the grip level's rising, and so is the intensity, with 34 minutes and 45 seconds left.
Yeah, that's 25 Celsius for our North American listeners who aren't used to temperatures quite that low. But yeah, you're right. It's going to change the dynamic a lot. And I suspect because we are in evening conditions relative to the afternoon conditions that we saw at Laguna last week, that there's going to be more change over the course of the hour than we saw last week. So going to be fascinating to see who that favors, if anyone. Heidkotter piling the pressure on, and I do think their squabble there at the front is what helped Kenton get back. I'm not sure he has the ultimate pace of these two, but he's just hanging there doing his best, and who knows, maybe he's saving something for the final half of this race. We shall see, but really impressive stuff from Heidkotter, although right there a bit of a mistake. Got wide, got up over those bumble strips as you're calling them, and I think that cost him some time.
So as we watch these front three battle, I want to quickly touch on Dakota Dickerson in that red and blue Ferrari. He started up in 5th spot and has kind of dropped down the order a little bit. So looks like he's struggling just a little bit today. 10th, certainly not bad right now, Ryan, but not going the right direction.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to see. He was one of the hard chargers last week, did a nice job, got a good result in our race at Laguna. By the way, did want to clean up something. We saw Carl Whitmer with that penalty, and that is what it was. We saw him going down the pit lane, and he did indeed get a drive-through penalty. He was 10th at the time he served it. He's back in 17th now, but yeah, it's surprising to see Dickerson running in 10th and not a little bit higher up. He's been a winner in just about anything he's driven in his real-world career. And then we see this Honda battle between Blackstock and O'Gorman. Really fascinating stuff. Blackstock, who races one of these cars in GT World Challenge America. O'Gorman, with lots of Honda experience, has tested at NSX but has not raced one, but we're seeing them put on a pretty good show right there in the back half of the top 10.
Yeah, again, these two actually shared a car last year in IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. That was the LA Honda World 37 Type R TCR machine. So these two actually have been co-drivers before, and Tom's actually been a co-driver with Kenton Cook as well in the 59 up in 3rd. So Tom's kind of been around the block a few times in sports car racing. Currently sits at 8th place. He's dropped down. He was at a high of 6th earlier today, so a little bit of work to do to get back to that spot. But those two continue their fight. Back up at the front three, though, closing in on halfway, and you see the time 7:35 p.m. Local time here in Misano, Italy, and I'm just wondering who's been saving and who's been driving all out, because tire wear was a concern last week, at least on the NSXs. We saw that for sure. And how much has Josh Staffen laid out on the table just yet?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I think each of these drivers wish they knew about their opponents. They've got a good idea. The head display and ACC does a nice job of kind of telling you what your situation is as far as tires are concerned, so they can monitor their own situation in car, but as far as what their competition is doing, that's a bit of a mystery here. I gotta say, Staffen from the lead, he started on pole, he's led every lap so far, and has seen pressure like this just about every single lap of the race and has proven to be unflappable. Really, really impressed with what he's done, not being distracted by that big old Nissan GTR GT3 in his mirror. Ran a little bit wide there, got a little bit loose, and that might give Heitkotter a run here into Misano Curve.
Yeah, looking at a little bit wide on corner entry, using the rumble strips on the left-hand side of the track, swinging back around and closing in, but Josh Staffen very cool under pressure. While we got this incredible battle going on, make sure that you check out the giveaway in the chat off to the side of the screen. Got some awesome Asus Republic of Gamers products that we're giving away this week, so make sure you enter to win in the chat below. All right, as we head back up to the front, Kenton Cook. Oh, big jump over the curbs there, those big bumble strips, as I mentioned. That, again, you cannot run over those. It's a track limits violation, and it'll certainly damage the underside of that front splitter. And the car's aero relies a lot on the underside, so Cook got to be real careful with that.
Yeah, you have to wonder if that car incurred some damage there. We'll have to keep an eye on his lap times. That was big. And not just running over the curbs, but when you get airborne like that, coming back down, you wonder if that might do some damage as well. But we'll see if that affects Kenton as we go. Here comes Brian Heitkotter, though, as we look back from Staffen's car. Good look at that lurking Nissan that has been so fast in the hands of Heitkotter. It's a real shame we don't see these racing very much anymore globally, and in fact I don't believe there are any plans to race them outside of Japan this year, which is a real shame, although we did see one or two racing at Bathurst and they were really, really fast there. So that I love this car, I always have, and like I said, I wish we could see a few more of them racing stateside or even in the European SRO championships.
So halfway through this race, 30 minutes left, and trying to get the Pirelli tires working is Brian Heitkotter right behind that Audi R8. I just have to wonder if he's just biding his time here and putting pressure on Josh a little bit later in this race. Looking back deeper in the field, Shelby Blackstock and Tom O'Gorman continue their fight. Here comes O'Gorman up the inside in his number 37 car as he tries to work around it and back off throttle and try to slingshot by Shelby here on the straightaway. Final corner, and O'Gorman's going to go by on the inside. Good pass there.
Yeah, but it's not done yet. Looking for the crossover move, and it doesn't look like there's an option there for Shelby, but good job there by Tom to find a way past. We'll see if he can hang on here going into Misano Curve, and he does. We bring up a good point with those two racing as teammates last year in a TCR Honda. They ended up fourth in the championship there, but won a couple of races. In fact, really got the season off to a great start with wins in each of the first two races a year ago. Boy, this is not done at all, is it? Shelby wants that spot back. Tom O'Gorman fighting very hard to keep his friend behind. Both of those cars looked out of shape there.
He straddled the inside curbing there, and that actually hooked the car around. And we discussed the curbing briefly, but most of the curbing around here is relatively flat, but there's a couple apexes towards the end of the lap that have actually two stages of curbing. The inside stage is a little bit taller than the outside stage, so you get it on that, and it'll actually hook your car around. That's what happened to Blackstock, and he lost a couple tenths of a second. So he has a little bit of work to do to get back to Tom O'Gorman. Now lap traffic for the leaders, and Josh Staffen's in the middle of it, takes a dive to the inside, and that car's going to go a little bit wide.
Wow, that really was not ideal. It wasn't clear what direction the lap traffic was going to be going there. That is the 26 of Toby Grahovic, and I think that did cost Staffen a little bit, but it happened in a part of the track where it's difficult to make any kind of passes, and Staffen has been really clever with the lines that he's been running through the first half of this race. Very defensive, but not so much so that it costs him with any kind of momentum coming onto a long straightaway, and he's been able to keep Heidkotter at bay with that. But I think Brian right now can afford to be patient to some degree and hope that lap traffic does prove to be a factor as they work their way through a few more cars here. That might be his real opportunity to make a pass. Not a ton of great passing zones around this track. It's most known as a motorcycle racing track, so it's tight and twisty, all right, and difficult to muscle a GT3 car by another one if the pace is relatively similar.
I've been noticing a lot of Heitkotter's corner entries, especially on the end of the front straightaway. He's actually got almost all 4 tires to the outside of the curbing, just trying to use a couple extra feet of racetrack. Now, you can use up to the white line. That's fair racing surface, and the drivers have already experimented to find out how much track they can use, but Heitkotter's got a couple extra feet of track in space, and I think that's letting him carry a bit more speed through the corners and staying right to the rear bumper of this Audi R8 in front.
No, I think you're spot on. It's the classic late apex, just trying to get a better run out to use to attack. And crucially, Kenton Koch has dropped off of this battle. You can't do that as readily when you've got a car behind you. That just invites that trailing car to make a dive to the inside when you run that late apex line. So Heidkotter really needs to take advantage of the fact that Koch has dropped off a little bit, although you can see he's closing back in. So clearly, despite that airborne moment, not too much in the way of adverse effect on Kenton, and he evidently has not used up his 3 strikes at this point and has not been issued a drive-through, so that's good news for him. Still very much in the hunt, but lagging back just enough that Heidkotter can take that line that you were touching on.
These front 3 continue to be the class of the field. Last time by for Staffen, a 36.2, a 36.0 for Heidkotter, and a 36.2 for Kenton Koch. So all 3 of these guys really kind of matching each other's pace. A little bit deeper in the field. Let's check back in with Alec Udell. He went around earlier, had a bit of an incident, and he's trying to catch right back up to, actually he's gotten by Kyle Marcelli in the number 80, and that actually in front of him looks to be one of the other. Well, that's Marcelli in front of him, rather, and that's right behind him. That's Carl Whitmer in the 22.
So Whitmer doing a nice job to recover. Remember, he had that drive-through penalty earlier, was as far back as, I think, 17th, and has recovered up to 14th. We know he has a ton of pace, and here he is taking a look to the inside of Udell, and it looks like he's going to be, well, did I speak too soon? No, he does make that stick. Yep. Yeah, that was some nifty stuff there to get past Udell, who is a champion in GT4 European Series competition last year in the Silver Cup class, became the first American to win a championship in that series last year, and at one time was the youngest driver ever to take part in a Pirelli World Challenge event, but a little bit older now, not old by any stretch of the imagination, just in the last couple of years graduated from Clemson University with a mechanical engineering degree, and one of the young up-and-coming sports car drivers. Would love to see him back on a regular basis in GT World Challenge America, where he's made some cameo appearances in the last couple of seasons, has run full seasons in the past, and would love to see him back on a regular basis. One of the good characters in the sport as well.
Slinging in a couple tenths of a second behind the 22 of Carl Whitmer, who again is still recovering from that penalty, as you mentioned there, Ryan. We'll jump back a little bit deeper in the field to some drivers that we haven't talked about in a little while. Dakota Dickerson from 10th, now back to 22nd place. Nikolai Elganian in the 71 car. I'm looking all the way down the order to try to find where he is. Oh, there's car stopped on the apex. It's one of the green cars. Couldn't see who that was. Looks like that's Mark Ramsey's 93.
And not what you want to see when you're one of the cars coming through. All of a sudden, there's a stop to the inside there. Looks like Mark's been able to gather it back up, get going. He's been doing some GT4 racing in the States alongside Alexander Prima, a name that many people recognize. Very accomplished sports car and touring car driver, as well as Australian supercar racing as well. And he working with Ramsey. They've been kind of building up Ramsey's professional career here in recent years.
There's Guy Cosmo in the number 8 Bentley, and he had a bit of an issue earlier in the race. A big slide and drifting that massive Bentley platform. Again, this is one of the heavier cars, but a lot more grunty down the straightaways. It's got the aerodynamics of a refrigerator box, but it is a fast race car.
I know, you don't look at it and think this is going to beater, but they've been remarkably successful, especially going back to the beginning of this year with the Bathurst 12-hour, and it was a really remarkable victory for this Bentley team, a long-awaited major endurance race win in GT competition. Rich history at Le Mans going back to the 20s, and that evocative nose on the Bentley painted with the car numbers. We see a nice move here. Is that a problem for Heitkater?
Yeah, he actually has a lot of damage on the nose of that car, so he drops out a second. This is the battle now for third place, so Bohm is going to go on through. So Heitkater's run into something or someone. I wonder if Josh Staffan's got the damage to match that in the rear, maybe. I don't see anything. Maybe there's a scratch. No, I'm not seeing that. Maybe Kenton Cook. No, I don't know, but Heitkater's got some damage, whether it was from a lap car or another competitor, but he's now dropped down to, it looks like, fourth place.
Wow,
totally
and that car does not look right either.
No,
he's going to have plenty of company here, not too much longer if it's damaged badly. So I'm really curious where that came from. It's not like Brian to make a mistake. He was flawless last week and really good coming through the field the week before in the test race. So I suspect it had something to do with something unexpected from lap traffic, but without a replay, we're just speculating at this point.
Yeah, I don't see anything immediately standing out to me between car-to-car incidents right now. So he also has damage on the rear of that car too, so could have swapped ends on him and backed it into the fence. But that's certainly going to change the outcome of this race. As Josh Staffen and Heitkater were battling for most of the race. And there's a couple of drivers fighting for position in front of their leader, and now Kenton Cook is beginning to reel in. Staffen, last time by, he was half a second quicker than that lead Audi, who is now full of lap traffic.
Yeah, that's going to be holding up Staffen here, and did not get any favors there from the Ferrari in front of him, able to get past the NSX, but has a ton of traffic to work through, and now we'll see if Kenton Cook has any more luck. Looks like he's going to get balked as well, unless he can get a really good run down the straightaway, but indeed, he's going to have to sit and wait a little bit and be patient, and that's so hard to do when you're trying to chase down the leader. You see him up there, you want through that lap traffic so badly, and looks like there might have been a spin right in front of him a moment ago. Too wide right in front of Kenton Cook as he tries to chase down the leader.
Yeah, couple cars going off. That's an Acura, one of the Ferrari. So the lap traffic, it's almost like Bristol in NASCAR there, Ryan. You got lap cars that are slipping and sliding. You got to make sure you get through it without getting into it. And things happen very quickly at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's the trick, and it is a real challenge, especially when you consider the fact that every car in this field, they're all GT3 cars. They're all capable of effectively the same speed, so it's not like you're passing out-of-class traffic or anything like that. It doesn't come easy when you're passing lap cars, and really, the gap between first and last in this field was not huge, and now they're working their way through kind of the middle part of the field in terms of the running order, so the pace there is quite strong relative to the leaders. It's not going to be easy, especially when the guys you're lapping are fighting for position themselves. They don't want to give up a spot to let the leaders through. They might not get it back again. So it's definitely one of the challenges.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing to touch on too, is that there's a blue flag, but that's just a flag that tells you that the leaders are coming. That's not a move over and get out of the way flag, like a lot of drivers like to think it is sometimes. So they're entitled to their space on the racetrack, and you make sure that everybody gets room to race on the racetrack. It's plenty wide enough. You just got to make sure you catch drivers in the right spot.
The thing to think about too is what goes around comes around a lot of times, and people will have long memories if they're not treated well. When the shoe's on the other foot, there can be a little bit of a revenge factor that gets thrown into the equation.
There's Parker Chase in the number 14 Audi, and he's actually chasing Udell, who's just gotten by him. So pass for position between these Audis, and right behind him, that is the 230 of Josh Staffen, about to put them a lap down with 18.5 minutes to go.
And clearly Staffen was able to work through that traffic better than Kenton Cook was, because he's opened up a sizable lead. This is probably as big of a gap as he has had, and now he's got another lap car between himself and Cook, and that's what he wants to see. Now trying to get past Udell, who slides wide, and Alex, pretty clean driver, so he's going to leave that door open, let the leader slip through. Hopefully for Alec, it doesn't let Parker Chase come through again, and that's what I'm talking about. These guys, they've got a fight of their own to worry about, and yeah, you want to be as considerate as you can be, but it's not always easy.
So Kenton Cook now battling some lap traffic. We're hearing that he's got a drive-through penalty, and I'm not sure if this is for track limits violations or what. We're about to find out here in just a moment. But that's
I believe
huge.
it was for contact with a lapped car. That's what we're seeing from...
yes. Yep.
And you don't see any damage on the car, so it couldn't have been much. But I wonder if that goes back to that battle. There were the two red cars. I think it was an NSX and a Ferrari that were fighting right in front of him as he was trying to make his way through lap traffic. We saw those two cars spin off and Kitten come through. I wonder if that might be the root cause of all this, is now we do see up on the screen that drive-through penalty coming for Kitten Cook. What a break for Staffen, who drove under pressure for over 40 minutes in this race, and now he's going to end up with a pretty sizable lead to inherit once Kitten comes to pit lane.
And I'm sure Kenton will be fighting this all the way heading down to pit lane. He's actually going to drive on by. He's got a couple more laps to serve this, but again, we saw that purple car come out from behind the mess of lap cars, and again, we saw Kenton get penalties last week, and it was relatively early in the race. He was able to fight back. This is much too late in the race to recover from this. This is a disastrous situation for Kenton. For Josh Staffen, though, this is the second time we've seen the driver that was putting pressure on him drop out. So this is great for Staffen. Now Kevin Bowman third is the next driver, but he's a long ways back.
He is. I think he's going to be pretty happy with where he stands, so I don't expect to see him overly aggressive. We haven't seen the kind of outright pace of Staffen out of Bohm to this point in our race weekend, so I think with that information in mind, assuming Kevin doesn't have something that we don't know about in terms of a couple secrets or a little bit of pace that he's been holding back, I expect that he's going to be quite content to take home a second place finish. And so Staffen does find himself, like you said, in a pretty good spot. You can see Highcutter has dropped to fifth. That'll be a fourth once Kitten takes the penalty. I think the big question for me now that remains is how many more spots will Highcutter lose driving a car that clearly is not 100%.
Here you see Dirk Grunwald go up the inside. This is a battle for fifth, and pass complete for that pumpkin orange BMW M6. And right behind that is Dickerson, Dakota Dickerson's number 72. He is a lap down to the leaders here, but still going to be moving around this stricken GTR. So, just about 15 minutes remaining. We want to remind you again, if you're interested in checking out the Asus ROG giveaway, make sure you can enter that in the chat below or off to the side, whatever platform you're on. Free to enter. Check it out. Asus ROG peripherals, and we know ROG makes some amazing stuff. So check it out in the and enter below. So, with 15 minutes to go here, we've got Josh Staffen leading the way. Kenton Cook still has yet to serve his penalty. I'd expect that to be within this lap or next lap. Otherwise, they'll stop scoring him.
Yeah, he might be doing the old Scott Goodyear here in penalty, just keep on driving and make somebody stop. We'll see. I think like you said, you get a couple of laps to serve it, and we'll see what Kenton elects to do. He's certainly showing some good speed still, which makes this more frustrating. The other thing he might be doing, and realistically probably is doing, is he's got some clean track here. He's running good laps, just building a bit more of a gap so that when he does serve the penalty, he doesn't fall back as far in the running order as he would otherwise. And so hopefully he can salvage something out of what has been a really solid run for him for the third straight week. I think we've all been really impressed with the pace of Kenton Cook, relatively new to Assetto Corsa Competizione, but he's been towards the front every time we've shown up to do a race, and one of these days it's going to break his way, and he's going to get the result he's looking for.
So take a look with 14 minutes to go, how beautiful the sky is right now here at Assetto Corsa Competizione. We want to thank them for being, for really doing a great job this past week, getting the brand new overlays that you're seeing on screen. That was pushed out this week, so thanks to the Kunos team for doing that for us, and they've done an exceptional job bringing us both this sim and the updates from last week to this. So you have them to thank for that. And make sure that if you're interested in Assetto Corsa, Kenton Cook removed from the racing surface, disqualified for not serving the penalty, and that is huge. Ryan, I can't believe that he didn't come down and serve that, and now he's off the racetrack for good.
Well, you got to wonder if there was maybe some miscommunication there, or he wasn't aware that the penalty was there, or perhaps he was just driving along in protest. But at a certain point, the stewards have to do something, because it did look like he was reeling Staffen in, and even if he didn't catch Staffen, there's always the chance as you're making your way past lap traffic that you could somehow interfere with that race, and if the car really shouldn't be running in that spot, you don't want to see it have an impact for people. So that's going to be a question that needs answering when we get to the end of this one. I'm curious to see what the cause of all of that was, but like we said, this is big for Staffen. A nice job for Bohm. It improves him up to second, and he's been fast lately. I was speculating about his pace, but he actually turned the fastest lap of the race a little while ago, so he's awfully quick there in that Mercedes, as we're seeing. And then Bellinger there in third, although Bohm's right in the thick of things with some of this traffic.
And a big slide there at the corner exit as well, so maybe the rear tires going away a bit on this Mercedes platform. Again, front engine, rear wheel drive, so it'll kind of get up and skate away from you on corner exit if you're not careful with the throttle applications. So, big dive up the outside. That is the 14 car that he's trying to work around. Now that's Parker Chase, who's now a lap down to the leader. So those two blue flow. Oh, that was real tight down there. And Parker Chase will finally back out and give the 90 the spot, but that was about as close to disaster as you could get.
Wow, not what you want as a leader coming through the field. You don't want close moments like that in podium contention right here. But, you know, hard to fault anyone. This is just a tough track to make any kind of passes on, and not a lot of places you really want to be side by side as Garen goes on a big old spin there. It's probably going to have to give some time back because other than the off-course excursion, that looked pretty like a pretty quick way to get through there if you're not restricted to the asphalt.
Yeah, that final sector actually has a cut-through road on the inside of the racetrack, and that will actually disqualify you if you try to cut through there. And it's no ifs, ands, or buts. You go through there, you're out. So you got to make sure that you don't go all the way through that section. So checking back in second place, Kevin Bohm in the number 90 Mercedes, still working through some lap traffic. And that is the 2 car who is outside. That's Jason Bell in the Porsche. We haven't talked a whole lot about Jason, but he sits 14th right now, Ryan.
Yeah, Jason Bell, one of those guys, really an up-and-comer in the sport. He's doing a great job with a very ambitious schedule this year. I really feel for him. We talked about last week. He had a ton of racing planned. Sometimes he was planning on doing as many as 8 races on an SRO America weekend across several different series, with his eye on that coveted Porsche Cup, which is a competition effectively for any driver in Porsche equipment that is not a factory drive. So that was his goal. He saw Alan Brynjolfsson chase that successfully in the past, and so that was kind of his idea this year, to try and chase that by running as many races as possible. And I'm not quite sure what all of our schedule changes in the real world are going to do. I suspect that this is not going to count for the Porsche Cup, unfortunately, for Jason, but he's doing a great job and getting a lot of coaching from Andrew Davis, which is a name that is very familiar, I suspect, to many North American sports car racing fans. One of the better GT drivers of the last 20 years, just been around forever, and the reason is he's awfully fast, awfully consistent, and a great driver coach for someone like Jason Bell, who wants to get faster and has a business to run in, his real life. So has limited time to get up to speed and has relied heavily on Andrew to help get him up to speed in the last year and a half or so, and it's really paid dividends. So great to see him doing well here.
Kurt Grunwald closing in on that number 84 Aston and Don Bellinger. So I think we're going to have a battle for third here on our hands. We're under 10 minutes remaining in GT Rivals, the 2020 season, round number 2 here, Ryan. So we're going to see a battle for a podium spot. Staffen and Bohm way up the road, but third place not done yet.
No, it certainly isn't, and Grunwald, one of our sim racing competitors, we talked about that during qualifying, racing that BMW, which is great to see that platform represented at the front. Doing a really good job. It's been a clean and consistent race for him up to this point, and I think you can see his quarry up ahead. 2 guys that know each other, Bellinger and Grunwald, because they're part of that champion racing stable in the sim racing world, and really representing their club quite well.
Drive-through penalty for the 26 car, and looking down the order, that is going to be Toby Grahovic in the BMW M6. So he's had some trouble today, currently in 23rd for the time being, so he will have to come on down. Parker Chase was also assessed a drive-through penalty. I'm not sure if this was lap behavior related, but he was amongst the leaders there for a little while, so he'll have to come on down and serve a drive-through for the next few laps as well.
Well, that's too bad for Parker, another young guy who's chosen to go the sports car racing route, did a little bit of open, really but from a very young age was awfully focused on GT racing. Did some racing on behalf of Ginetta in the States as well as in England for a short time, and has seen his career blossom in recent years. So under the tutelage of Ryan Diao, of the great sports car drivers of the last couple decades. He's been proven to be a great driver, coach, and mentor for young Parker Chase. This, however, is tight stuff.
Oh, and look at Jason Bell right in the middle of that. They're going to go 3 wide. That's Grunwald right next to him. Contact, and around goes the 4th place driver. He spins, and that's huge for the battle for the podium.
That's really unfortunate for Dirk, because he was the victim of that situation for sure. He really did nothing wrong, was doing his best to avoid it, and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It takes some luck to get a good result in racing, whether it's in the virtual world or the real world, and luck not on the side of Dirk Grunwald that time.
7 minutes left, and the sun is almost set. You see right behind the 84, there's Jason Bell in the number 2. We talked about him briefly, and there's Dakota Dickerson back at 18th place. So this battle to begin here. So Parker Chase still has yet to serve his drive-through, Grahovic as well. So they'll both have to come on down, or they'll see a similar fate to Kenton Cook. But back up front, Josh Staffen, you see the lead here. It is quite a distance. Kevin Boehm way back about a sector. So that 90 car, a lot of work to do in 6 minutes if he wants any chance at getting the win. But I think it's going to take a mistake or an accident by Josh Staffen to lose this race.
Well, we've seen it a couple of times, haven't we? Even going back to last week, like Brian Cotter had it signed, sealed, and delivered effectively, and there was, on the final lap of the race at Laguna, a crash right in front of him, and he was very nearly caught up in the midst of that. So these things aren't over until you take a checkered flag, and so I think Kevin's got to be thinking about that. He wants to stay in contention so that if there is a problem, he can take advantage of it. But like you said, on outright pace, don't think it's going to happen today. Nevertheless, a really solid run from Kevin Boehm, who is really doing a great job representing that CrowdStrike Racing DXDT team.
Checking back in on some of the Acura NSX drivers, Tom O'Gorman currently the leading NSX right now in 7th place, and Blackstock in the 81 and 8th, and Carl Whitmer in 9th in the 22. Couple spots back is Kyle Marcelli's number 80, he's at 11th, and Abel in 12th in the 53 car. So they're all kind of grouped together, all those Acura NSX machines, but O'Gorman still leading those.
Yes, and doing a really nice job of it. I'm sure he'd like to be a bit higher up. There is that inter-manufacturer rivalry as well, and so to be the fastest of the NSX runners, that means something, and so I think he'll take some solace in that. But really good job by Whitmer going back to him, back into the top 10. He had a penalty earlier in this race, was back in, I think, 17th, and done a nice job to get back inside the top 10, backing up the solid pace we saw from him a week ago at Laguna.
There's Shelby Blackstock right now working through some lap traffic in his number 81 car. And under 5 minutes remaining now, and Dirk Grunwald, oh, he's around again, just looped it again. And this is gone from bad to worse for the 136, and I just wonder how much dirt and debris he got on his tires after that initial spin, and if that's contributing, or if he's just over driving now trying to make up some time.
I think you bring up a couple of good points. It could be either, it could be a combination. It really is frustrating when you have a good run taken away. Yeah, unfortunately, there he is another spot, so he's back to 5th now, and is going to have to do some work to try and catch up with Takis Wikas, who is, again, one of our sim racers in the field, doing a really good job. Look at that top 5. You can see the number plate, the color of that number plate is different for our sim racers. It's silver for the sim racers versus white for the pro racers, and so you have 4 of the top 5 belonging to champion, which really shows just how good these guys are. They have really worked hard at their craft, and it's on display here against a really good field of pro racing drivers.
Look at the sunset here in Misano, Italy. It's absolutely beautiful, and again, thanks to Assetto Corsa Competizione and the entire Kudos team for what they built here. It is absolutely beautiful out. 3 minutes and 43 seconds remaining in this race here. The shifter banging away for Wikas in 4th place, and Grunwald back in 5th. Now that orange car at the back of the shot. If we look off the nose of this car, It's a long way up to find the 84. He's already down in the first corner trying to chase Kevin Bohm, but even then, it's still quite a way. So the front group are now very spread out after the initial first 20 minutes there, Ryan. We had a very tight grouping at the front.
Yes, we did, and unfortunately, it's not going to show, I don't think, in the box score when you look at the gap between first and second and third and fourth and on down the line, because for the bulk of this race, we had a really good battle amongst the top three. I think it was as good as we've seen, and for various reasons, that's been broken off at this point, but some really good performances, and Staffan's been picture perfect at the front. Really nothing you can say that he could have done any better from the outsider's perspective, at least. It's been really, really strong, his run from pole. I think he's led every single lap of this race.
There's James Pesic in the number 40. That's Jacob Abel right in front of him. This is the fight for 12th. This is for position on the racetrack. And right up the road, you see that's the BMW M6 of Grahovic that's already come down and served his drive-through. So battle for 12th still underway here with 2.5 minutes to go.
Yes, it's not done yet, and there's plenty of fights for position that still need to be settled here before it's all said and done. And Pesic, usually driving a Ford Mustang GT4, driving the Aston Martin here this weekend, the GT3 Aston Martin. One of the young up-and-comers as well, I think. We're not going to see him quite as often in Pirelli GT4 America this year. He's got a lot of duties as a high school football and wrestling coach. He was a Division III football player at Coe College in Iowa, and looks the part when you meet him in the real world, but he's been a fast race car driver and a quick study driving for his family-owned team, that PF Racing you see. It's Pesic Family Racing, and they've done a really good job evolving into a stalwart team in GT4 racing stateside with those Mustangs, and he's been really fast despite lacking a ton of experience behind the wheel. He's been a quick study.
Check in on where our leader is, because next time by should be white flag for Josh Staffen. From the drop of the green flag, we knew he was going to be hard to beat, but it was Brian Heitkotter that was on his heels for the first 20 or so minutes until he ran into some trouble and has dropped now down to 6th place. Kevin Bohm is in second, but he's running out of time, Ryan. As Josh Staffen rounds the final corner, he'll pick up the white flag this time through.
Well, what a performance from Josh Staffen, just start to finish. Really remarkable stuff for the 24-year-old from Teaneck, New Jersey. No experience racing in real life. His real-life occupation, Chief Time Officer at Tacony Audio, and loves music and sim racing, drives the Toyota Camry in his day-to-day life, but loves this Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo platform, which has been so successful. In fact, at this track last year, I mentioned it earlier, in GT World Challenge Europe competition, it was an Audi that picked up one of the 2 wins on that doubleheader weekend. So not a surprise to see it run well, and Staffen's been really strong from the drop of the green flag. Drove through a ton of pressure early on, and certainly will be a deserving winner if he can hold on for the final half a lap or so.
Couple Acura NSXs fighting. That's Carl Whitmer in the 22 and Blackstock on the inside in his number 81. This is for position 8th place on the racetrack, and they're going to go side by side through the middle sector here, and Blackstock tracks out wide, trying to hang on to this spot as Whitmer puts pressure back on.
Boy, that is a fierce fight, and there's a lot to lose between these two. They've got top 10 runs pretty much buttoned up at this point, but that's not good enough. It never is for a race car driver, and we know just how fast Whitmer is, so good to see him with a nice recovery here this weekend.
They'll have a full lap left to fight that off, but for Josh Staffen, he's almost all done with this lap. The last 15 seconds of the lap for Staffen. It was from the drop of the green flag, the pole sitter of the night, the owner of Champion Motorsports, hosting these events. He's going to come through the final corner, and Josh Staffen in his Audi R8 leads from flag to flag. He goes to victory lanes in GT Rivals Round 2 from Misano, Italy. What a race for him.
Just masterclass stuff, winning from pole, how crucial that pole must have been. It was pretty tight at the front, very nearly Brian Heitkotter stole it away on the final lap of qualifying, couldn't get it done, and Staffen grabbed the lead from the start and pretty much dominated from there. And then how about this, Kevin Bohm, a really fantastic performance from him, surprised us a bit last week, looking very strong here in week 2. It's not going to be a surprise if it happens again. Great job by the Honda engineer from Marysville, Ohio.
So the 3rd place driver, Don Bellinger, he's actually has a drive-through penalty. He's going to come to the checkered flag, rather. I'm not sure how this is going to get handled here, but he might drop to the end of the lead lap. So that's going to change the podium in the top 5 here, but we'll see how it cycles out. But Dirk Grunwald He'll come across the line, scored in 5th place, make it 4th as Bellinger drops down the order. So all things said and done, Grunwald did a great job recovering from those 2 spins that he had, and for Bellinger, it's an 80-second penalty to put him at the tail end of the lead lap there.
Yikes, that stinks because he had a great run going. I'm sure if it was a track limits thing and it happened on that last lap, that's going to be just really difficult to swallow. This battle is not done yet, though, Kyle.
And Carl Whitmer is going to bring him to the line. Drag race to the Acuras, but Carl Whitmer will be the one that wins that fight. He'll finish 6th place, and Shelby Blackstock, a little contact with a lapper there at the very end, but he comes home in 7th. And Tom O'Gorman also will finish inside the top 10 in 8th. So, wow, what a race we had there at the end. Bellinger will come home in 9th place unofficially here. But let's take a look at our finishing order here and have a look-see here. So, Staffen, again, victory by 30 seconds. He put on a clinic like Heitkotter did last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca.
He did. It was just about flawless. I really can't think of anything that we saw screen throughout the course of the race. Had to survive a ton of pressure, especially in the first half. And it was unrelenting, but so was his focus, and that's what I'm curious to talk to him about. Just what was it like with a champion from the sim racing world and a really accomplished pro racer as well, Brian Heitkotter, putting the pressure on for the bulk of the race.
And we talked about Kevin Boehm in 2nd place. And how about, wow, look at all the Acuras. Whitmer, Blackstock, O'Gorman. And then there's a little bit of a break between Rieger and Bellinger, and then it's Marcelli and Abel, 11th and 12th, and the rest of the Acuras. They, for some reason, all together there in a nice, neat pile from 6th back to 12th with a couple in between.
Well, it makes you think that they found the pace that car was capable of here at Misano, and sometimes certain tracks favor certain cars. We call it horses for courses, and in this case, maybe that was about what the NSX was capable of. Still, good results and something to build on moving forward. I love to see that Heitkotter, despite whatever it was that happened to him, was able to come home in 5th. Good recovery considering, really a good job to salvage it, I should say, considering he was about 5 seconds a lap off the pace after he sustained that damage. It speaks to just how far ahead of the field the top couple guys were at the point that he had the problem.
So scrolling down to the bottom of the list here, some drivers that didn't have very good days. Guy Cosmo all the way back in 23rd. Kevin Anderson in the 24th place spot with his Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and Elgani, we didn't see a lot out of him in the 911 GT3R, as of course Kurtz had some issues as well in his Mercedes, and I don't think Stuart McAleer or Morad actually even started this race, so it was really just everybody else. Is that Stuart or is that Steve McAleer? That's at the bottom.
Stephen McAleer. Stephen
McAleer, sorry, forgot that. But and also Dakota Dickerson back in 17th after starting in 5th. I think he had better plans for today than to finish 17th, so maybe a little bit disappointed in that run.
Yeah, there's a few guys, if you look at this part of the finishing order, that fall into that disappointed category. It's not where you want to end up. The second straight race had problems off the start. That's going to be tough to swallow and put that behind you and move on to the next one after all the time I know he's been putting in preparation for these events. And really, anyone in the back half of this field, that's how they feel. It's one of those what might have been situations, and they'll look to rebound from this for sure.
So in just a moment, we're going to bring in a drivers to talk to on the podium here. We'll talk to Staffen Boehm and Weekus as well as Brian Heitkotter here in just a minute. So we'll wait for that. We actually look like we have Takis here. Well, please help me with your name because I don't know if we're doing that right or wrong, Takis. So you here? Got a copy?
Yep, I'm here. It's Takis Weeks.
Okay, we're kind of close. Brian, I'll let you take it away with him.
All right. Well, let's dive into the race that you had. I have to admit, we didn't have you on the screen. So for the viewers, let us know, was it action-packed or were you kind of hanging around there and waiting to take advantage of maybe misfortune for others?
Yeah, the first third of the race, I had a close race with Don and Dirk. I saw Dirk was a little quicker than me, so I let him by. And there was a little bit of action going on with back markers and a couple contacts there, but for the most part, it was clean.
How difficult was lap traffic around Misano?
I just have to be patient. It definitely took a lot to choose the spots for when to go by and to predict who was going to.
For sure. And you were racing around a lot of your Champion Motorsports teammates throughout the course of the race. Was that kind of fun to see some of the familiar, despite racing in what is effectively a pro race?
Yeah, it definitely was, and I've raced with them so much, so I'm very familiar with the way they race, so I wasn't worried at all about making contact with them, and definitely was fun seeing them.
What does your schedule look like? Are we going to have you in more GT?
Looks like my next race is Spa, and then after that, not sure.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you in the Ardennes Forest in Belgium at Spa. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the podium.
Thank you very much, guys.
Move on now to Brian Heitkotter, who came home, looks like in 5th place. Brian, tonight we're running up in 2nd, putting pressure on leader Josh Staffen. Things went wrong after that. What happened? And walk us through the rest of your race.
Oh man, that was a lot of fun. I gotta say, Josh defended really well. He had a lot of pace, but I had his draft most of the race, so I could keep up with him. Yeah, I was coming out of, I think it's turn 6, onto that kind of mini back straightaway. And I hit I just touched the outside sausage curb on the exit, and I just must have touched it in the wrong way, and I was a passenger from then on. It sent me into the wall. So really fun race. You know, what could have been. That was shaping up to be a pretty fun battle between Josh, myself, and Kenton. But yeah, it's a tough track, that's for sure. You got to really push the track limits, and I just pushed it about a millimeter too far there.
Brian, anything for Brian?
Yeah, just curious for you, Brian. Were you holding back while you were behind Josh, or were you pushing him for ad?
That was pretty much everything. There was a couple moments where I decided to cool my tires a little bit and then take it easy for a lap. And I was trying to strategize how I was going to pull off the pass, and try to not battle him too much, because Kenton was kind of keeping a watching brief behind us, and I selfishly didn't want him to enjoy the battle, although I'm sure it would have been great for the broadcast. So yeah, but most of the time I was flat out keeping up with Josh.
All right, hey Brian, thanks for talking to us, and it was still a really strong run, and 2 top 5s in the first 2 weeks. Congratulations on that. We'll see you next week.
All right, so thank you guys.
All right, have a good one. Move on now to Kevin Boehm, who finished in 2nd place in his number 90 Mercedes AMG. Kevin, 30 seconds back from Josh Staffen, but you laid it all out on the line there and grabbed a couple positions as some of the front runners fell out. Walk us through your day and into the evening here as you worked your way up into 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, the race was really tough. The conditions were a lot different than in qualifying, so it kind of took several laps for my car to really feel correct with kind of 110 liters of fuel. So it kind of took me a few laps to figure out what the car really wanted to drive, and by then the liters had kind of pulled a decent gap, and at that point I just kind of set my sights on trying to keep everything clean just in case those guys made some mistakes, and it kind of paid off in the end.
Talk to me a little bit about the track limits today. We saw a couple drivers violate those, go a little bit wide. How difficult was it to stay on course, especially while negotiating lap traffic?
Well, I mean, this track, to go fast, you have to use everything that's available, and it's so inviting to ask for just a little bit too much. So it was really tough to kind of control the need to try to track out or clip apexes because it's so dangerous. I mean, what happened to Brian is a perfect example. I was just trying to not do that. I did that so much in kind of some of the practices and qualifyings that I knew I needed to kind of keep that clean. Otherwise, kind of big mistakes like that could happen. So that was one of the big priorities for me.
We go to some other tracks in the next couple of weeks. We head to Paul Ricard. We got Spa coming up. Which track on the schedule are you most looking forward to? And do you think you can eke out a victory here in the next few weeks?
I don't know. I mean, congratulations to Josh, because he was absolutely flying out there, and those guys are super fast. I've still got some learning to do to kind of close the rest of that gap, but I'm really looking forward to all of the races in particular. I mean, this is really exciting to do, and Spa in particular, because I haven't driven most of these tracks, but I kind of understand Spa, so that'll be pretty fun.
Kevin, thanks for talking to us. Nice run tonight in the number 90, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Sure thing. And we got a race winner in here somewhere, Josh Staffen, who led from flag to flag. And Josh, you had a lot of pressure in those opening few minutes, all the way up to about halfway through the race. You had Heitkotter hot on your heels, who was the winner from last week at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, but you held on and were able to drive away when the others behind you fell like flies. Walk us through your night up in front.
Yeah, well, qualifying was clearly very good for me. I think that's one of my stronger suits, kind of looking back on this. Start of the race went well at the same time, and it was a good launch. Got ahead, held my position at the start, and that's really what I needed to do because I was pretty happy to, you know, just kind of look behind me, see what those guys were doing, see where they were strong. It became apparent pretty quickly on, though, that my race pace isn't quite where I wanted to be because, you know, you had Brian pretty much right at the back of me the whole time. And so it was a matter of matching what he was doing, trying to find out where he was looking for opportunities and just adjust as you go.
Obviously, your first week running last week, WeatherTech Race Week Laguna Seca didn't run. Looking forward to the next couple weeks, can we expect to see you here more? And do you think you've got a potential to win these next few rounds?
I certainly hope so. I'm off the schedule for a little bit while we get some of our other guys running in. I'm looking at Barcelona right now for the next race. But yeah, certainly looking to try and get another win there as well.
All right, I guess one last question before we tune out for the day. That pressure you had from Height Cotter, walk us through what's going through your mind there when you got these drivers pressuring you. You got Kenton Cook back there as well. Is it a different kind of pressure having these pro drivers back there, or is it the same old that you're used to from racing in sims throughout the years?
For me personally, it's actually kind of same old. You know, this is something that I've been doing at CMS for a couple of years now. And it's something that you just need to get used to in general, because in the end, racing is racing. It's a matter of, can you control your nerves? Can you maintain your attitude and your focus as you go through? Because if you start thinking about any other kind of things like, oh my God, I'm racing these guys, then yeah, it's going to go to your head and you're going to start making some mistakes. That's just how it goes. But hey, none of that.
Josh, congratulations. It was a really strong run and super impressive drive. We look forward to seeing you back at Barcelona.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that'll wrap up the interviews, I think, here. But I think we'll mention one last time before we begin the closeout procedure here that if you're interested in entering the giveaways here, we got a couple things that Asus ROG has stepped in to help us out with. So here is a look at what you can get here. Asus ROG peripherals bundle, as well as a copy of Assetto Corsa Competizione. You can get your own hand and own try at this game here. So really excited to see who's got that. So make sure you enter in the chat below or off to the side, depending on what platform you are on. And as well as we head to Paul Ricard next week, Ryan. So we're looking forward to that one. We did that as a test race, and it put on some really solid racing.
Yeah, it did. Massive straightaway there at Paul Ricard that leads to a place that they can get some passing done. It's another one where track limits is going to be part of the conversation, but if the test race is any indication, it should be a blast. It was absolutely wild a couple of weeks ago, and I'm excited to see what it looks like here next week.
So a week from now, it'll be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on the GT World YouTube channel or on GT World's Facebook page or Twitch. So make sure you join us again, and we'll see you next week at Paul Ricard. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.